Today's project is how to make this cute, chunky, pocket-sized carrot. Let me place him down beside his friends, and I'll show you the other variations I've made. I've made him in purple and also in white. For today's project, you'll need a crochet hook. I'll be using my 2.5mm clover hook. You'll need a sewing needle, a stitch marker, some pins, some safety eyes and safety washers, and a pair of scissors so that we can cut our yarn. You'll also need to grab some toy stuffing so that we can stuff our project along the way. And finally, the most important thing, the yarn. I will be making an orange carrot today, so you'll need some orange, some green for the leaves, a little bit of pink to give rosy cheeks, and a little bit of black for the mouth. This will be today's colour palette. Let's start today's project by making the body of our carrot. Grab your orange yarn and make a slip knot. Attach the slip knot to your hook and chain 2 stitches. In the second chain from the hook, place 6 single crochets. And as a quick side note, I will be yarning over for the entirety of the project as there is no colour changes occurring. I will quickly speed up the video and meet you at the end of the first round. With round 1 complete, we're going to attach our stitch marker on the very last stitch that we created so that we know where the round ended. If there's a hole forming in the centre of our work, we'll give our yarn tail a little tug to close it, and then we can move on to round 2. For round 2, we're going to be doing an increase into each of the 6 stitches of round 1, and by that I mean we're going to place 2 single crochets into each of the 6 stitches. At the end of round 2, you will have 12 stitches in total. Let's meet back at the end of this round. Grab your stitch marker and place it in the last stitch that you created. And again, if a hole is forming in the centre of your work, grab your tail end and give it a little tug to close it. We'll move on to round 3 now. And round 3, we will do a single crochet followed by an increase. And we'll do that for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 3, you will have 18 stitches in total. Wonderful! Now that we've finished round 3, we can move on to round 4. And for round 4, it's very straightforward. All we're going to do for round 4 is single crochets all of the way around for 1 round. With round 4 complete, we can move on to round 5, and we're going to start increasing again. We're going to do 2 single crochets followed by an increase, and we'll do that for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 5, you will have 24 stitches in total. Perfect. We can now move on to round 6 and round 7, as we're just going to be doing single crochets for both of these rounds. Let's meet back at the end of round 7 for the instructions of round 8. Round 8 is up next, and for this round we're going to do 3 single crochets followed by an increase, and again we will do this for the entirety of the round. At the end of the round, we will have 30 stitches in total. For rounds 9 and 10, we're back to some simple single crochets. So for both of these rounds, let's just do single crochets and meet back at the end of round 10. Round 11 will be our final increasing round. For round 11, we will be doing 4 single crochets followed by an increase. And once again, we'll do that for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 11, you'll have 36 stitches in total. To further elongate the body of the carrot, we're going to be doing some single crochets for rounds 12, 13 and 14. So for the next 3 rounds, continue doing just single crochets and let's meet back at the end of round 14. Excellent, that's round 14 complete, and at this point I would suggest that we secure our work. It's a perfect time for us to stop and then start adding the details of the carrot's face. So let's secure our work and then we will move on to adding the eyes, mouth and cheeks to our carrot. First up, let's add the eyes to our carrot. I've already added the first eye and I've placed that between rounds 10 and 11. So that's me counting from the bottom all the way up to round 10 and 11. So now that we know the placement of the first eye, we can grab our second safety eye and we can count the stitches in between. We want to have 4 stitches of a gap before our second safety eye is inserted. Now that the safety eye is in the correct place, we can pick up our safety eye washer and secure it into place. The safety eye washer has a curved side and a flat side. We want the flat side to be the one that is facing the yarn. So let's pick up our work and place the washer onto the back of our safety eye, again making sure that the flat side is facing towards the yarn, and we're just going to push down until we hear it click into place. Awesome. Now that the safety eyes are now attached, we can now move on to embroidering the mouth of the carrot. Next up is the mouth embroidery. For that, we'll need some black yarn and our yarn needle. We will start the embroidery from the inside of our carrot. We want to insert the needle 1 row below the safety eye and in line with the inside corner of the safety eye, just like this. And then we'll pull our yarn through, but leave a little tail as we'll need that later to secure the yarn in place. Next up, we're just going to go straight across and insert the needle back in, again in line with the inside corner of the other eye, and this will give us a straight line and a bit of a bemused looking carrot. To give him a smiley face, let's insert our needle again. We want this to be 2 rows down and central to the mouth. And then we're going to pass the needle up through the mouth and grab the yarn and pull it a little in order to create the smile. And then we want to just pass our needle back through the hole we came out of, as this will lock the mouth in place. To secure the black yarn, we want to then grab the 2 yarn ends and tie some loose knots in order to make sure that they don't go anywhere. Next, we can move on to making some cheeks for our carrot. For the cheeks, we're going to need some pink yarn and our sewing needle. And like before, we're going to be working from the inside of our carrot to the outside. We want to place our needle in line with the bottom of the safety eye and in line with the outside corner of the eye. Pull your yarn through and leave a tail so we can secure it later. Then count across 2 stitches in a straight line and create the first part of the cheek. And then repeat this step by going through exactly the same holes to give a stronger definition of the rosy cheeks. And there we have it, the first rosy cheek is done. We're going to then repeat this on the other side, again pushing our needle through from the back to the front in line with the bottom of the safety eye and the outside corner of the safety eye. Then count along 2 stitches in a straight line and pull your yarn through. And repeat this one more time, going through exactly the same holes as we've just done. Perfect. Now we have a very cheery, chunky carrot. The final step is to grab our yarn ends and tie some knots in order to make sure that the yarn doesn't go anywhere. Now we can continue with the rest of the project. Let's now finish the rest of the body of the carrot. First of all, we're going to remove the stitch marker that we were using in order to secure our work, and then we're going to place that in the very last stitch of the last round we created. Next up, we want to reattach our work to our hook. And now we can begin round 15. For round 15, we will do 4 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease. As this is the first time doing an invisible decrease in this project, I will talk you through how to do that. So let's get these first 4 stitches out of the way. For the invisible decrease, we want to grab the front loops only of the next 2 stitches and then continue by making the stitch as we usually would. Continue round 15 with 4 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease all of the way around. By the end of round 15, you will have 30 stitches left. We're going to continue decreasing in round 16. So round 16 is 3 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease, and we'll do that for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 16, you will have 24 stitches. Round 17 is up next, and for this round we will do 2 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease. At the end of round 17 we will have 18 stitches. Let's meet back at the end of round 17. Perfect! As round 17 is complete, let's secure our work briefly as we're going to stop there and start stuffing our carrot. Grab some toy stuffing and start tearing it up. I like to tear it up as it leaves my toy less lumpy and bumpy, and when I'm sewing later on in the project, it means that my sewing needle goes through my work a lot easier. Let's meet back once you've finished stuffing your carrot. We're on to the final stretch of our carrot's body. Pick up your work again and then remove the stitch marker and once again place it in the final stitch of the last round. Reattach your work to your hook, and now we can begin round 18. For round 18 we will do a single crochet followed by an invisible decrease, and we'll do that for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 18 we will have 12 stitches. Great, we've made it to the final round. Round 19, all that we're going to do is invisible decreases all of the way around. At the end of round 19, you'll have 6 stitches left. And let's meet at the end of this round and I'll show you how to close your work. That's us completed our final round. And before we close up, this is our final opportunity to stuff the carrot any further if we need to. In order for us to close our work, we'll need to detach our project from our working yarn. So make sure you have enough yarn in order to sew that hole closed and make a snip. Pull your yarn all the way through your final stitch, and I will talk you through how we're going to close up this last round. Closing up our work is very straightforward. Thread your yarn needle with the remaining yarn, and to close our work, what we're going to do is, using our yarn needle, we're going to grab the front loops of the next 6 stitches 2 at a time. So stitches 1 and 2, and then pull your yarn through. Now grab the front loops of stitches 3 and 4, and again pull that yarn through, and you'll start seeing that hole is closing as we do this. And finally, stitches 5 and 6. And then what I like to do is pass my needle through the center of that area we just closed up, as it makes it a little less bumpy. Our final step is just to weave in the ends of our yarn, and then we can move on to the carrot top. Let's start with making the smaller of the carrot leaves. Begin with picking up your green yarn and creating a slip knot and attaching it to your hook. Now chain 2 stitches. In the second chain from the hook, we're going to place 6 single crochets. Add your stitch marker to the very last stitch you created, as we want to mark where the end of the round is. And if there is a hole forming in the center of your work, give your yarn tail a little tug to close it. Now we can begin round 2. For round 2, we're going to do a single crochet followed by an increase, and we're going to do that for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 2, you will have 9 stitches in total. Replace your stitch marker, and again, if there's a hole forming in the center of your work, give that yarn tail a little tug to close it, and then we'll move on to round 3. For round 3, we will do 2 single crochets followed by an increase, and we'll do that for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 3, you will have 12 stitches. Excellent. Now for some simple crocheting. For rounds 4, 5 and 6, we are going to just be doing single crochets all of the way around. So that's just single crochets for the next 3 rounds. Let's meet back at the end of round 6 to continue. Now for round 7. For round 7, we're going to start decreasing. We're going to do 2 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease, and we'll do that for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 7, you'll be left with 9 stitches. Round 8 is up next, and for round 8 we're going to do a single crochet followed by an invisible decrease. At the end of round 8 you will have 6 stitches left. Let's meet back at the end of round 8 as we're going to pause our work briefly and start stuffing our leaf. Perfect. Let's secure our work at this point as it's the ideal time to start stuffing that leaf. So place your work down and grab some toy stuffing. With your toy stuffing in your hand, start tearing it up as we don't want that leaf to be lumpy and bumpy. One quick thing to note, I've tucked the yarn end inside the leaf itself. So all that's left to do is stuff that leaf. Let's meet back once you've completed that. We're on to our final round. So let's disconnect our stitch marker and place it into the last stitch that was created of the last round. Reattach your work to your hook, and then let's move on to round 9. Round 9 is very simple. We're just going to do single crochets all of the way around. And just like that, we've completed the first leaf. Grab a length of yarn as we're going to need that for sewing the leaf onto the body of our carrot, and give it a quick snip. Pull the yarn all the way through the last stitch, and the next thing to do is to rewind back to the beginning of this chapter and create a second small leaf. Now that we've completed both the small leaves, let's move on to the central larger leaf. Grab your yarn, create a slip knot and attach it to your hook. Now chain 2 stitches. In the second chain away from your hook, place 6 single crochets. Place your stitch marker in the last stitch that you created so that we know where the end of the round is. And if there's a hole forming in the centre of your work, give that yarn tail a little tug to close it. For round 2, we're going to be doing a single crochet followed by an increase, and we'll do that for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 2, you will have 9 stitches. Replace your stitch marker, and if needed, give your yarn tail a little tug. Let's move on to round 3. For round 3, we're going to do 2 single crochets followed by an increase, and like before, we're going to do that for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 3, you'll have 12 stitches. Next up is some simple crocheting. For rounds 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8, we're just going to be doing single crochets all of the way around. So again, for the next 5 rounds, we're just doing single crochets. Let's meet back at the end of round 8. Awesome, we're almost there. For round 9, we're going to start decreasing. And to do that, we're going to do 2 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease. And we'll do that for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 9, we'll be left with 9 stitches. For round 10, we're going to do a single crochet followed by an invisible decrease for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 10, you'll be left with 6 stitches. Let's meet back at the end of this round as we're going to pause for a moment and start stuffing the larger leaf. Let's secure our work here. We're going to stop for a moment and start stuffing the leaf. Grab your toy stuffing and start tearing it apart. As I said before, I do this so that our work is not lumpy and bumpy. So go ahead and start stuffing your larger leaf, and then let's meet back once you have completed that. Now that your larger leaf is stuffed, let's pick up our work again and remove the stitch marker that we were using to secure it. Replace the stitch marker in the final stitch that you created in the last round, and attach your work back onto your hook. For this final round, round 11, we're just going to do single crochets all of the way around. And that's the larger leaf complete. Grab a length of yarn so that we can sew that leaf onto the body of our carrot and give it a snip. Then just pull the yarn through your final stitch to secure it. Now we should have 3 leaves in total, 2 small leaves and the larger leaf that we've just completed. We're now ready to sew. We're at the finishing line of this project and we're ready to sew on the leaves to the body of the carrot. Pick up the larger leaf first. We're going to place that in the top central part of the carrot's body. Once you're happy with the placement, grab some pins to secure it into place. I like to use 2 or 3 pins to make sure that it doesn't move. Once it's secured, we can start sewing. And we're wanting to use the final round of the leaf to attach it to the carrot's body. Go ahead and sew the leaf onto the carrot's body and then let's meet back. Wonderful, that's the first leaf attached and we can move on to attaching the other 2. The 2 smaller leaves will sit on either side of the larger leaf on the top of the carrot's head. It will look something like this. Like before, pick up some pins and pin them into place so that they don't move when you're sewing them onto the head of the carrot. And once again, once you're ready to sew, you're going to use the final round of the leaf to attach that to the head of the carrot. So go ahead and sew both of the small leaves to your carrot and then let's meet back. And there we have it, a happy, chunky carrot. He can now join the rest of his friends. As always, thank you so much for joining me in this tutorial, and I hope you crochet a lovely bunch of carrots.